Hi, this is Jamie Heiberger Harrison here today to talk about purchase CEMAs. First of all, what is a purchase CEMA? It is a consolidation, extension, and modification agreement. It's an agreement between a seller's payoff bank and the buyer's purchasing bank. And so it's an agreement between the two of them, and what does it do? It allows somebody to save on the mortgage recording tax that has already been paid by the payoff bank. For example, take a $1 million mortgage. That $1 million mortgage, in order to get that mortgage, the buyer at the time, who's now the seller, had to pay mortgage recording tax. What is that? That's 1.925% of the amount of the mortgage. So on a $1 million mortgage, you're looking at about $19,250. So $1 million mortgage is getting paid off. Buyer's taking out a new mortgage. There has to be a new mortgage involved and new money involved. So it wouldn't be enough if the buyer, let's say, was going to borrow $900,000 or even $1 million. There has to be something more than just the original amount of the mortgage. So now let's say that the buyer's coming in, they're going to get a $1.5 million mortgage. What does that mean exactly in terms of the money? What it would mean is that the new mortgage amount, that $1.5 million, the buyer has to pay mortgage recording tax on that amount. However, if the buyer does a purchase CEMA, it allows for him to take an assignment of the mortgage from the old bank, assuming that he's at a different bank. You don't need the assignment if, let's say, for example, it was Citizens Bank to Citizens Bank, Citizens CEMA to New Citizen Purchase. You would not need that assignment. Otherwise, if it's different banks, you would need an assignment of the mortgage. And then what that would mean is that you would take over the old debt, combine it with the new, and thereby the buyer would only be paying tax on the new money. And that total amount would be half of the $19,250. So in this example, coming off of it from a new money, $1.5 million, the seller and the buyer have about a little less than $30,000 between them that they can use to offset somebody's costs. What does that mean? That means you have this great concept that you can use and offer to your sellers and to your buyers or to the other broker on a transaction when you're trying to get the parties together in order to make a deal. I recently had a transaction. It was a townhouse property. My seller had a $2 million mortgage. Buyer comes in. Buyer is getting a $3 million mortgage on a $5 million purchase. That $2 million mortgage that my seller had, he already paid almost $40,000 in mortgage recording tax. $19,250 times 2. I'm sorry, 1.925 times 2, and that gives you nearly $40,000. What we were able to do, and this actually happened before I even got the transaction, the brokers had negotiated that the savings on the mortgage recording tax would go to the buyer. That almost $40,000 allowed for the parties to make the deal happen. So what is the net here? The net is be creative. It's a tough market out there. Anything that you can come up with that can add value to your deal, to your client, to your broker, you should think, use, and create some value to that actual deal. So in the example where you have a seller, they have a mortgage anyway, the money's already spent, why not go for exploring whether or not you might be able to do a purchase CEMA? If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I will see you next week.